But I wanted a very specific skill set. I wanted to be able to do good medicine in bad places, austere medicine. And so we'll see anybody that walks through my door and treat just about anything, which I have the Army to thank for, honestly, is that the breadth of training I got in the Army equips me to feel confident that anything can walk through my door and I'm comfortable treating. So I grew up in Southern California in Los Angeles. I'd never met anybody in the Army. You don't really see a lot of people in uniform growing up in Los Angeles either. So I think the first time I saw somebody in uniform was the recruiter that came to my college to talk to us. My dad was a dentist and my mom was a nurse, and so I kind of had a general inkling of doing something like that since I was a kid. Looking at my mom was, all life was just taking care of people. And so that was an easy way to see myself. I started through HPSP, the Health Profession Scholarship Program. So they paid my way through medical school. So I did the 4 years of medical school, then residency for 3 years, and then I finished in 2016, and that's when my active duty commitment started. And then I served active duty from 2016 through 2020, got off of active duty in 2020, and been in the reserves the past 2 years. The Los Angeles recruiting station that I actually recruited out of back in 2008, they had somehow got my contact information, digging through old records, and they had contacted me about coming out and speaking at some of the universities in LA, at USC and UCLA, and where I went to school at Loyola Marymount University. And I was active duty. They put me on TDY and they flew me out there, and we did a couple of speaking engagements at the different universities. And they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And I did too. I love working with students, so it's kind of an easy segue for me. And I think they had found too that, well, I'd been doing this professionally for at least the past 6 years at that point as a director. And so I live, breathe pre-medical admissions, and I train pre-medical students how to get accepted.
Every applicant that we talk to, right after I'm done with them, we give them right to Dr. Flick, and he can answer all those real specific questions about residency, about match rates, about Army versus Navy, about Army versus Air Force. You know what I mean? Because when you hear it from me, well, I'm a recruiter. Of course, my job is to make sure that, the Army's put in the best light possible. But you have Dr. Flick, who knows all the ins and outs of it. He coaches and mentors students on his own time to prepare for medical school. No other physician, at least in my knowledge, is doing that.
So I basically just partnered with recruiting battalions, starting with the one that I worked at, just a company, at the company level, and said, hey, well, let me start working with more students. So this started with a handful just coming from one company, and they'd send them here and there. And at this point, probably somewhere between, over the past 2 years, I've probably worked with in between 100 and 200 different students.
He had expertise that no other physician that wears a uniform does.
Being deployed to Iraq in 2005 kind of piqued my interest in medicine. I'd actually planned on leaving active duty for a while. I had civilian plans that I'd been developing for a long time. And so last year I went and sat down with the recruiting people up in Denver. He got me in touch with, among other people, Major Flick, to sort of learn the little ins and outs on the physician side. And so over the past year, I've had a lot of consulting with various people to sort of steer me in the right direction in the reserves.
Major Smith was probably my first interaction with the reservist as a totally different paradigm. So now I'm working with a colleague and a peer instead of a high school or college level. And so there's a different dynamic there. I probably met with him 3 or 4 times, exchanged dozens of emails. We text all the time because he's got questions, right? Even though he's actually senior to me as a physician, I'm kind of his go-to for questions about how the reserves works, how do I set this up, how do I transition smoothly? And I think having that comfort of, okay, I can lean on somebody as I make this transition was probably the bigger push to say, okay, I feel comfortable doing this. Because otherwise, after a full career in active duty and switching over to the reserves, it can be a little daunting.
Medicine's a great career. Really have an open mind. There's a lot of different opportunities.
And it's a really cool skill to actually even just walk around the civilian world with. You can be driving your car and think, if I stumble upon a car crash, I feel well equipped to be able to treat somebody if need be.